Hi, I'm Natalie,
I'm Candice.
And I'm Danny.
and we are following Soulspiration. In today's episode, we talk about expectation and how it can lead to both disappointment and limitation. We explore why expectations exist and how our awareness can allow us to embrace our reality and see the magic in the present moment. Enjoy. Hello, ladies.
Hello.
How are you?
Great. I'm doing good. Thank you.
Good. So welcome back. We are now today, actually I'm not going to tell you what we're talking about until I've read the card. We have a card for today's podcast, which is Soul's Truth. And it says, "My soul is moved by simple truths and authenticity. The path of the soul can be different from that of the rational mind, and it can take longer to reveal itself. Today I listen to my soul and I ask myself, what do I really want and what do I really need? Whether I'm at the beginning, middle, or end of a phase, I embrace this moment for the wisdom it brings. I allow change to occur naturally. I wait to see what unfolds, what shows up for me, and I give space to the unknown and to myself. Intentions and goals can sometimes be lists of shoulds and must-dos, but souls speak a different language, one that's free of conventional agendas and ideas. Therefore, I'm willing to take time to simply reflect on, appreciate where I am right now, rather than feeling I need to push to create something new."
Wow.
Isn't it a beautiful card?
That's a really, really good one.
Okay, and I love it even more because the topic for today is about expectation. And I really feel that this completely ties into it from the place of, listening really to what you really want and not being tied into other people's expectations or even your own expectations about what things should, quote unquote, look like. And more just going with your truth, which is what I really love, and allowing each moment, even if it isn't what you expect, to bring you the wisdom that you need to receive in that moment and allow change and all of those things. So like everything in that card, I was like, yeah, that totally feels true to expectation. So one of the reasons I wanted to talk about expectation is a while ago I wrote a blog about expectation because it's been one of the biggest things in my life that's changed my perspective on almost everything. And I'll give you a bit of backstory to give you the foundation of why I changed my opinion on expectations, or why I began to see expectations as pretty much the root of all evil. So not everyone will know this, but just over a year ago, my eldest daughter was diagnosed with some additional support needs. And at the time, even though I really, really expected this diagnosis, or I knew that it was coming, when they said the words that, this is what the situation was, it just completely broke me. And I was upset for a long time, which confused me. And I kind of was annoyed with myself for being so hurt when for a year I'd expected and knew that this thing was coming and going to happen. But still, when they said it, I couldn't accept it, even though I'd had all of this time, and I knew in my heart, I knew before anyone else said anything. So it broke me for a while, and then I just kind of slowly began to kind of try and look at where the hurt and pain and sadness was coming from. And I realized that actually I wasn't sad about the situation. I wasn't sad that my daughter had received this diagnosis. I wasn't sad, maybe a little bit, but I wasn't most of my disappointment stemmed from how I expected my life to look, what I expected my life to look like. So I expected my daughter to have, do, be, love certain things. And, this was confirmation that it wasn't necessarily going to look like I thought it was going to look like. And I wasn't necessarily going to have the future, and her childhood wasn't going to look like my childhood. Because I think often when you have children, you kind of just expect, you think that they're going to enjoy the things that you enjoy doing because you remember as a kid, oh, this was fun, so we'll do this with my kid. But she doesn't necessarily enjoy those things, or is not necessarily able to do those things. So anyway, basically it got to the point where I realized that it was what society had told me my life should look like, and the fact that my life didn't look like that, that's why I was upset. not because of the situation, not because of her, not because of my actual reality. And I began to realize like how stupid that was, in the sense that I'm sat here heartbroken about something that was never mine, like something that I kind of had out there that I just expected. There was like there was no way it was going to look any different. Like that was just what my life was going to be like. But actually, it never was. And when I look now at the reality I have, like I can totally see the beauty in this, and I would never have been aware of this potential or this path or this, you know, all of the things that I can appreciate now with what I have. It would never have been on my radar. So so I wrote a whole blog post about it, and really I found that it really, like, almost all disappointment comes from one form of expectation or another. So I don't know if you guys want to, if anything comes to you right away, if you guys have anything to share initially on expectation before we dive any deeper.
Yes. Yes, please. Sorry. Number one, would you give your blog where they can find it? So if anybody's like, oh, that really sounds like something I need to read, then they can go look at it.
You can, yes. So you can go to rainbowsandlighthouses.com/expectation, I think it is, but I'll drop the link on our website on the blog post. If people go to our actual website, followingsoulspiration.com, as well, if you want to click on there.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you, though. Thank you.
And also, just while you were talking, I was reminded of when I had this lover, right, and things ended for one reason or another, and I had that realization. Unfortunately, I wasn't in the point of my development where I could really look at it in other examples of my life. This was years ago. This is probably about 6 years ago or so. And I wasn't at the point where I could really learn the lesson enough to really apply it to all the situations in my life. But at the time, I remember the realization that part of it was I was just missing him and his physicalness and everything that we were living together and everything that was there like every day. But the biggest part of it was that this future that I had envisioned with him was never going to happen. And I do remember the distinction, but good for you for like, just really like, there's one thing in acknowledging it, and then there's another in taking that knowledge and kind of what you do with it. And it all kind of depends on where you're at kind of, and what you're ready for.
Yeah. And I think that in that situation, you know, like, yes, I knew it. It took me time to then actually still accept it, you know, even though I was aware, like, this is what's making me unhappy. You still have to be in a certain place to be able to do that. So, you know, just because you know, when you're aware that it's your expectations that are like disappointing you or peeing you off, like, it doesn't mean that you can just flip a switch and go, oh, okay, then, well, it's fine because it's just my expectations. Like, you're still allowed to be, you know, mad or upset or whatever it is about the situation. But it helps when you realize that. So when you start to look at, like, what is it actually here that's upsetting? Is it my reality, which, you know, sometimes can be upsetting as well as the expectation piece, or is it actually something else?
I know for me, I mean, my biggest lesson in expectations is probably similar to yours, Danny, in that, you know, I'm recently separated, and the biggest emotional piece, I mean, we had come to a place in our marriage where the day-to-day wasn't necessarily enjoyable. So it wasn't like the actual being together relationship part that I was mourning. I was mourning the expectation of what I thought it should have been. I was mourning the ideas that I had about what it should look like rather than what it actually was. Because what it actually was didn't feel good. But my ideas and my expectations of what it should be were fabulous. And so, I mean, I don't even know if I'm through mourning that yet. Even knowing that it was just expectations, it's still, you know, a work in progress. I'm still working through that and letting go of that. And I'm also, you know, I've recently moved back to where all of my family is. And after being away for 10 years, it's taking some time to, like, acclimate back into that dynamic. But I'm seeing it on a daily basis within myself, my expectations of my mother, my expectations of my sister, and any frustration and disappointment is really coming from that place. It's not that like they've done something heinous that's, you know, upsetting me or frustrating me in the moment. It's that I expected them to do something different. So I'm like in the throes of it right now and having the awareness, but still in the moment, not being able to take a step back, take myself out of it, and just allow things to be as they are. Like those expectations, I think, are so hard to step back from because it is stepping back into the relationships and the roles that I had for my whole life. So it's almost like habit, you know? I find it a little bit easier to manage expectation and have an awareness about it and then shift it when it's not relationships that are so strong or deep. But those family relationships, it's a learning process right now, for sure.
I think as well, like when you're saying that, so you know, you're saying, oh, so when that's happening, it's hard to kind of like take a step back and look at the actual situation. But it reminds me of our conversations around the present moment. So like the expectation, when you're in a situation and someone doesn't behave as you expected or something doesn't happen as you expected, it takes you right out of that present moment, because then all you can focus on is what should be here rather than what is actually happening. So it's like it's such a thing that doesn't allow you to be present because you can't let go. And it's the kind of thing that happens all the time, you know, with spouses and partners when they're saying, you know, like when you just expect your husband or your partner to do a certain thing and they don't do it. Like rather than be like, you know, like sometimes, you know, my husband might go and buy me flowers. Like I don't complain about this. I'm just trying to give like an example. Say he bought me some flowers and I wanted tulips, and he brings me sunflowers. And if I'd asked him for them, for example, then when he brought something back, you could be so stuck on the fact that you didn't get tulips that you can't actually see the beautiful sunflowers that have just arrived. Like, do you know what I mean? It's that kind of thing. So it completely removes you from the actual situation and forces you into this place where you just resent it. I think I read a thing that said something like expectations are just premeditated. What is it? Premeditated resentments. That's it. Yeah, exactly.
That's really, I like that.
Yeah. And it's like, that is so true. So that leads me to the next question, which is then, why do you think we have expectations? Like, where do they come from? Is it like a past, or what's the laughter?
What a great question. I've never thought of it, but I love it.
So why do we have them? So is it from past experiences that make us assume certain things are going to go a certain way? Is it just the nature of us humans that we kind of need to have some form of control? So it's trying to assert control of a situation by planning ahead and thinking this is what this situation is going to look like and compartmentalizing everything, you know. But then it's like Danny, I think, has the phrase that control is an illusion, or she often says to me, like, you're giving up the illusion of control, where I'm like, oh, giving up control. She's like, it's an illusion. You never really have control, because do you? So yeah, I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on why do we do this to ourselves?
Yeah, I think you really just hit on it. I think if you had to say it in one word, you would say fear. Fear, because it takes a great deal of faith, I believe, to be in the present moment and know that everything's okay. We have these expectations so that we project our past out into the future, so that we have some sense of safety. And I think at its core, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I have to agree. It's not a question I've ever thought about before, so my brain's kind of reeling a little bit. But I do think that that you're right, Danny. At the core, it would be fear, because when we try and assert our control over things, it's to keep us safe and to avoid those potentially quote unquote dangerous situations, like, you know, your spouse not taking out the garbage. That could be disastrous.
So the other thing that I think about expectations is So it does two things. It either disappoints you because you have this expectation that something's going to look a certain way, and when it doesn't go that way, then it's annoying or upsetting or painful or whatever outcome it will be. But the other thing is, it is limiting. So the reason I also found this with my daughter is often, sometimes I can want to keep her away from certain things, thinking, oh, that will be too triggering for her. She won't be able to do that because I expect it to be too much for her. When actually in reality, I've been proven completely wrong before. So like, I can be trying to keep her safe, or it again comes from that fear-based place. So it's like the fear is both ways that we create the situation. But it's like, it either limits you or it disappoints you, which just makes the whole thing freaking ridiculous. Like, because we're just doing it to ourselves.
It does.
Through fear.
And then in addition to that, so even if it's not disappointing, so let's say, you come out the other side and I'll just go back to your spouse taking the garbage out, right? If that's your expectation of them, because that's what your parents did, or that's what society tells you they should do, or, Hollywood says that, this is how husbands and wives look. I can't even continue. I think Danny might spit out her water. Okay. So we have these ideas about what something should look like and have the expectation. And then when it actually happens, there's no like appreciation. There's not, oh, wow, I'm so happy they did that for me. It's just, you expected it. And so I think then that creates a cycle of disappointment almost, because even if they meet that expectation, then there's one to follow, and eventually it's going to fall short. And then there's no buildup of good feelings and appreciation leading up to
and gratitude.
Yeah.
Exactly. It totally just inhibits you from seeing the beauty in exactly what is, whether, it was something that you expected or not. Like, it stops you from being able to really, really appreciate the tiny things, because there's if you think about it day to day, you just expect that you'll keep breathing. You just expect that you'll have a roof over your head. You expect all of these things, but then it stops you from really being present, having gratitude for every single thing that happens, which again, just then it's negative, isn't it? You don't then have all the things that come from gratitude, all the appreciation, all of that presence, all of that joy in the little moments. You're like robbing yourself of that.
Yes, it's true. And when you were talking, Natalie, did anyone else, I got a flashback from childhood, of just feeling like I had chores every day that I was supposed to do, and just feeling like that one thing I didn't do on the chore list was the only thing that got noticed, right? And just as a kid, that's how it seemed. And that's where you go into the expectation. Like, mom just had a certain expectation, and that expectation wasn't met. Well, there were 99 little boxes. Well, it was chores. There were like 3 little boxes that needed to stop, But if I did do the last part of that one, like emptying the trash, and there was an upstairs bathroom that just didn't get the little trash emptied that day, like that was the only thing. But I also think of like in my parenting and in my relationships with people, and right. So how does that work? And what I'm seeing also is the beauty of when you kind of expect it, but you also say thank you. You also acknowledge, so that you can have that, where we have an expectation in our house where, you help, if you don't cook, then you help clean up or whatever. But we still say thank you when we're done cleaning up the dishes or whatever. So if my sister cooks and my son and I clean up, I still tell her thank you for cooking, and him thanks for helping clean up, right? So to at least incorporate that lesson in enough to know, I know what it felt like to have this expected of me and just to fall short a little bit. Well, this is still expected. I have high expectations, I guess, but it's more of a cooperative effort. So after you kind of incorporate that and do it for a while, then it comes back around. And it's really beautiful when you cook a meal and your 15-year-old son is like, oh, thanks for cooking, Mom. You're just like, oh, wow. Okay.
Winning at parenting.
Well, also part of it though is that I'm not one of those people who cooks every single night. Like sometimes he'll be on his own, or he will make eggs, or he'll make himself a sandwich or whatever. And he appreciates it when there is a meal because there isn't every night, and it isn't so expected for him. He doesn't take it for granted.
Yeah. Love it.
Yeah. And I guess, so we talked a bit about, expectations from others, and relationships with others, but one of the other huge impacts it has is like your expectations of yourself. So obviously in that situation where I'm talking about, the diagnosis and everything, and that I expected that I would handle it, like I really punished myself for not doing it. And that led to like this awful spiral. And so, I just expected that I'd be strong enough just to do it, and that I'd just be able to push those feelings away. And it's funny actually, because we were talking in the last episode about feelings, and my daughter is like really like tuned in, and she tends to like watch these films, and every time she does it has a message for me. So she like obsessively watches a film, and then like it mirrors something that's going on in my life, and then as soon as it's over she goes to a new film. So it's so funny because after last week, her latest film that she's obsessed with is Inside Out. Have you seen it?
Yeah.
And it's all about the feelings, and it is so freaking magical. So it's all about like this sadness, and they keep sadness, like sadness isn't allowed to get involved. Fear, anger, despair, and joy, they're the only things allowed. And, this girl is struggling because they don't allow sadness in. And then when they bring sadness in, it allows her to like, get by. And so it was just so funny that this is the thing she's obsessed with. But, it's one of those things where you just expect strength. You just expect yourself to do certain things. And then as a result, feel guilty rather than, again, looking at everything you've achieved. And it's one thing that I did, for example, it's again talking about someone else, but it's something that you could do for yourself in terms of like monitoring your progress. Is so often we compare ourselves to everyone else and what they're doing and what they're achieving, and want our situation to look a certain way, or expect it to look a certain way. But so for my daughter, her progression doesn't necessarily look the same as everyone else. So for a while, again, I found that hard, and would look, at other people and be like, oh, we don't have that, but we don't have that. So what I started to do instead was keep a diary of all the things that she achieved. So instead of looking at what everyone else was achieving and how far, our journey was from theirs, I looked at the progress that we'd made from A to B, and so that I could really appreciate those little things. So it's like one of those things that I think you could totally incorporate for yourself, where, when you have these expectations of, you feel that you should be up there with that person because they've been on a similar journey or whatever, then actually look at what you've achieved, look at where you've come from and where you've got to. And expectations, again, stop you from doing that because you're too busy looking elsewhere, too busy looking at the future, or too busy looking at like, this should have happened by this stage, and you're so hung on to that you can't even move forward from it. So I don't know if you guys have anything to.
I just love that. I think that I'm going to take some time and write out or journal out where I've actually come in the last year or two, because it's so easy to focus on, but I should be here, but I should be doing that. I should have this together already. I was putting that course together. I don't have that ready yet. Oh, look, so-and-so just released that course. So I think that I'm actually going to do that over the weekend and really take a look at everything that I have accomplished, because I am certainly guilty of that all the time. Having really high expectations of myself and then falling short and then beating myself up and then feeling like I'm at like the bottom of the barrel and, picking myself up again and setting those expectations too high so that I fall short again.
Yeah. And I think, again, to kind of bring in a little bit of the parenting angle, it's like the harder you are on yourself and not meeting your own expectations, then the harder you'll probably be on your kids. I mean, it's so worthwhile. I'm so glad you brought up just being easy with ourselves and honoring kind of where we are. And another thing, you guys know, when I get triggered, usually these guys are the ones who know it. And so I'll get triggered by like the life coach on the beach is one of my triggers, right? Like these life coaches who are on a beach somewhere and they're doing a live stream or whatever. And, talking about how you fill up to 6 figures, in 2 minutes. And It's a huge trigger for me. And part of it is like that expectation that as soon as my son graduates from high school, like I want to be the life coach on the beach, like part of that, right? I'm not going to be doing some cheesy live stream, but I'll be doing my own kind of wonderful live stream, but not a cheesy one. But no, but, you know, I'm joking. I'm exaggerating here just a little bit, but it's true. And before I just thought, you know, why are these so annoying, you know? And to point back to the podcast that we had on triggers are such beautiful things. If you, they're such a tool for growth, because life has a way of bringing up exactly what you need at exactly the right moment. And so noticing that trigger and not getting too far along with it before you're like, okay, this is really silly. Like, here's a beautiful woman who's successful on the beach. What I need to do is honor that and know that that is possible and send her love. And first I have to send myself love for like that wounding or that whatever is. And it's the comparison and it's the expectation that it should be going more like that than like this.
Right.
So I love that.
Yeah. And I think it's really important there to like just use her, the lady on the beach, as like evidence and inspiration, rather than a like comparison or a barometer. You know, it's more like, she's my evidence. It's possible. Okay, so the last thing I wanted to talk about with expectation was to do with like expectation and manifestation. Because if we set a thing that we want to manifest something, and we then, you know, have to truly believe it, I feel like if you have that, then technically you need to expect it to happen. Or do you? So like my brain started to go, well, what is that? So how does that work? So the way that I kind of perceive it is like, is it okay to have the expectation that it'll go that way, as long as you are unattached to it going that way? So that you can allow in anything, any other potential or any other way that it looks. So rather than being attached to it looking a certain way, you can do that. But yeah, I just wanted to know like what comes up when I say that, because I started to try and think about it, and then my brain was like stutter and then shut down because it kind of hurt my head.
Yeah, I love that. And I love how you got there naturally, because when you said that the topic was going to be expectation, and you were talking very early about expectation being the root of all evil, my head went to the manifestation. So I think for a lot of people, they'll get there. And I'm so glad you brought this up. And I agree that the difference is detachment. And I think the difference, if you look at it kind of at a deep level, is your level of consciousness around it. So we talk about expectations as being just what we expect. It's like ingrained. It's kind of our automatic way of being without thinking about it. I have this expectation that nobody's going to cut me off when I drive, and they're not going to drive too slow. They're going to drive close to the speed limit. Like, I have this expectation that we can all kind of move in traffic. And then what happens is a lane closes, and instead of people zippering in and being nice or whatever, you know, it starts to back up, and then my expectation isn't met. But, so I love that. So in manifestation, I think that the difference is consciousness. So when you're manifesting, you're conscious of, this is what I expect to happen, because I realize that I'm supported by the universe. Or I'll say like this or something better. But it's with a consciousness that allows some detachment. You don't have any detachment in the first situation. If you're just going along, it's kind of at a little subconscious level. Like, I just expect this to go the way I think it is. And then when it doesn't, I get angry. When you're in manifestation, I think you have to think about manifestation anyway. Like, okay, I'm doing this practice, and here I go. And I'm really am expecting it, and I believe it. And then I'm going to let go. It's just a consciousness. Like, you realize it in your mind. It's awareness. So you're either aware of it or you're not aware of it. So if you're not aware of it, it's running you. And if you are aware of it, it can be like a superpower, I think. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
For me, manifestation feels more like daydreaming, whereas expectation to me feels like control. Okay. Yeah. Mm. So, I mean, the awareness and the consciousness about it, absolutely. But I don't know, like for me personally, when I think of manifestation, I don't use the word expect. Like, I don't expect something to happen. I put it out into the universe and say, this is what I desire. This is what I want. This is what I'd like to have. But I don't necessarily, and believe that it's possible, but I don't necessarily expect it. And I don't know if that's because I manifest incorrectly. But it's about possibility rather than expectation.
Yeah, I think that's right. So I see that. So it's like it's belief rather than expectation. So when you set the intention, you can believe that will be the case, but that doesn't mean you have to accept it. The belief just means you're open to it.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything else that you guys would like to add?
I don't think so. This was beautiful. I think this will speak to a lot of people. I know it did to me.
Yeah, me too. And is serving as a very good reminder to be present in the moment and let go of the expectation.
I feel like this is our theme, right? Like, be present be in the present moment. Be in the present moment. It's like, you haven't got it yet.
Here's
none of us get it yet. We're still not doing it, but yeah, every week we'll tell you. Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much, ladies. If you want to go for more episodes, you can check us out at followingsoulspiration.com. Please share and like it or review if you've enjoyed today's episode, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, and subscribe. Bye, girls.
Bye.
Bye.